Good morning, everyone. Happy Monday. This is the Euro trade on TopstepTV. Let's start this week by doing a little bit of analysis. We're going to start with gold because I think gold, out of everything, is the only thing that's properly moving almost every single day, especially for COMEX. We had a very good move during Asia. Now, what can happen for the London session? They can actually reverse that. They attempted to reverse it already, but there's some levels that are a little bit conflicting, so I want to wait and see exactly what they want to do with it. If you're here for the first time, welcome. My name is Marcus D. I have been trading for 18 years, and 12 years out of that I've been trading for various prop firms. One of them was the European offshoot of First New York. So now we're obviously heading towards the remote prop firms, and the in-office prop firms seem to be a dying breed. So here we are. All right, let's have a look at these levels. So I have the micro gold here. Now, on the larger time frames, if I have a look at the weekly chart, it's still incredibly range bound. So there's not that much to glean from this. We have a top up at 35.98 and a more localized top that's been in force since May around 35.35. And then since this July dry up started, 33.04 is where the bottom of that range was. So not really much to glean from that, especially not if we're going to do smaller intraday trades. So let's move on to the daily chart. Now, daily chart is a little bit more defined. There is a supply level that is not the highest quality. That's sitting with the nearest edge at 34.57. And then we have a lower demand at 33.43. Right where we're located now, we actually have a bearish engulfing. That's kind of a drop-based drop formation if we're going to go into the analysis of supply and demand, but also not a great quality. Why? Because the price has not stayed away from it long enough to deem it a good sort of swing level area. So for me, swings are not going to be, I don't think they're the right call here, because, you know, for the swing, you really need to be either up here or down here. So yeah, so that means we have to go through some of the intraday levels, see what the options chain is doing, and then try to position ourselves as best as we can. Right where we are right now, somewhere around 3400, we do have the visible range volume profile point of control. It seems to be reactive at the moment, but for now they wicked it back from the overnight VWAP as well as the London value high area. So I'm going to bring back my drawings now and then drop down to the 30-minute chart, that is the intraday time frame, to create some hypos. All right, so first things first, where is the London value area? Well, it's sitting at 33.90 for the value high. This is London specific levels, it's not COMEX levels. And then the value low is actually overlapping GEX2 from the options chain somewhere around 33.85. So one of the hypos that could happen here is to retest that value high and then eventually go into the value acceptance. Now on the flip side, and here is where I'm not too happy when I see this sort of a situation, this is where the muddled outlook comes from, where you have a potential for a sustained auction to go into the value acceptance, but then you also have VWAP and some strong levels. So if they start to spend time below the initial balance, and the initial balance is this yellow rectangle with the red border, then we could try a short and then see whether we can go into that value acceptance through VWAP. But it's really not clear. You know, they touched the value high, wicked it back into the initial balance. And technically that would mean a weaker failed auction. Why do I say weaker? Because usually whenever you get failed auction situations, you want to see at least sort of two 15-minute candles that at least go below the initial balance, close under it, and then nicely an orderly reverse. That's not happened just yet, so we need to be a little bit careful. When it comes to stronger options levels, they are actually higher up, so they are sitting at 34.05. Let me just check coordinates there. Yeah, I must have moved that. And then we have a put support from the end of day trading at 34.10. So if we rely on those levels, I can see that there is a chance that we go and test the Tokyo high, then take it out as a stop run and reverse sort of situation into the gamble wall, maybe spend a little bit of time around there and potentially go backwards. But yeah, it all depends on what they're going to do here. On the 5-minute chart, there is a consolidation followed by a reversal. So you can see it tested the VWAP as well as the value high and then sort of hung around there. So really the failed auction might be the play here to actually go up to those Tokyo highs. But it all depends how they behave with the order flow. So yeah, so we have three hypos, right? We have the value high reversal from the value London value edge. We have a potential sustained auction into the value acceptance setup, and then nothing really until we get to that Tokyo high. So maybe the failed auction long could be a setup here. And let's do like a little test of trade to see, just to like dip our toes in the water and see whether we can make something work here. If they don't start to move it very quickly, I will cut this if it starts to fall back towards VWAP, and that will be my sign to sit and wait for COMEX to happen. So we need to have some initiation and momentum before we hold on to trades, right? So let's try that. I do have bookmap on my other screen. Let's have a look at what's going on the dome here. I mean, these are really not strong imbalances anywhere. We have this 33.94 level that has 26 contracts there. And nothing else. Nothing else. But yeah, we'll see what they want to do with this. I have a rule that if within the first sort of 5 minutes of starting a trade, if the price dips back into at least minus 0.5 R multiples in relation to the size of the stop that I'm using, they're always volatility adjusted. Also why I'm in a very small trade, it's a tester trade. And I just want to see if I can get a feel for it whilst being in an actual trade. I do this quite a bit, you know, just to kind of test the waters. And then if you don't get any sort of attraction within the first sort of 5 minutes, it's time to just sit and wait for them to make a proper decision. But if I look at the 30-minute time frame, there is one more level that I'm looking at, and that's this moving average area somewhere around 33.92. I don't know why that's a bit higher on this one. Let me just check what I have on my main platform. Is this an EMA? It is, okay. So there's a little bit of a difference in calculations. I know, hold on. Hold up. This could be why. Why do I have two of those? Okay, so moving average as an additional sort of orientation. So let's see if they could crawl back above it. If they do, I also have this 33.95 minor gex level, but it's kind of in the middle of the initial balance and also inside this supply area. So if they start to wicket back up, that will signal the value high reversal, but I do need to see it actually go properly into the initial balance for this to work out. If that doesn't happen in 5 minutes and we start dipping towards the VWAP, that's my early exit. If it goes higher and then just doesn't really make any attempt with volume increase to actually reach at the very least, the top of the initial balance, that's also going to be an early exit because it means there's no momentum and it's not a true failed auction. And therefore, you don't really want to be hanging around for a setup that you know should be really completed in the span of 30 to 45 minutes. But yeah, so let's have a look. Malik is asking me where I'm from. So I'm a naturalized British citizen and I've lived in England for about 25 years. However, I was born and raised in Belgrade, former Yugoslavia. And my family is a bit of a mix of Greek, Italian, and Serbian. So take that as you will. But everybody from my area is just a big kind of melting pot of the Mediterranean people. Like there's Turkish, Greek, Italians, like a whole bunch of stuff. So we all look very different. You can get like some very fair-skinned people, but then you have some people who look very, very dark. So there's, we're kind of in the middle of the kind of cross-section of the Middle East, Mediterranean, and then Europe as well. But yeah, my accent is messed up because I obviously lived here for so long. I'm married to an English person. We've been together for 20 years. And actually, we're celebrating 10 years of marriage this month. And obviously, he has a huge effect on my accent. And then on top of that, to make things complicated, I not only worked for, American companies. These days, the most people that I speak to are top steppers. So, obviously most of them are American, and my accent just tends to drift into transatlantic weirdness. Some words sound English, other words sound a bit more messed up. So take it as you will. So yeah, we're global, baby. We're global. All right. But yeah, I do live in England. So I've lived in London for 20 years, and now we actually bought a new house 3 months ago. So I live in an area called Surrey, which is just outside of London, and it's about sort of an hour away from London. So I'm not too far away from London still if I need to pop in there. It's a bit of a stretch, but not too difficult to get to, right? I didn't want to go out fully in the sticks, even though where we are, there's not much here. Like the nearest sort of town is it's about 2 miles down the road, and then we have a more major town that's a little bit further out, like about 9 miles away. So yeah, but I've had many people going, "Are you Egyptian? Are you Iranian? What else did I have? Are you Irish?" A lot of people think I'm Irish for some reason. Somebody asked me the other day whether I was Australian, and I'm like, I don't think I say like "nar." Nar, I'm not Australian. Even though I had Australian friends, like everybody did. Everybody had an Australian on their sofa at some point in England. All right, how's everybody doing? How was your weekend? Did you manage to get some rest? Or did you still stare at the charts? Because, weekends should be for resting. I fully believe that. Otherwise, especially if you're struggling with things and not actively progressing, we fall into these behaviors where we are trying to sort of learn. We're trying to learn new things, but then we mess things up in the real life markets, and then we get obsessed over that, and then you spend your weekends spending more of your mental capital instead of allowing your brain to reset. So, how was everybody's weekend? What did you do? Chris said back tested. Okay. See, I prefer back testing sort of either after hours or in between the sessions, because I don't trade like for 8 hours a day. I will spend, maybe a couple of hours while I'm on the stream, and then I have a big break. And if I want to do any back testing, these days I do it just through code. So, I put some conditions in and then run that. So I don't even necessarily sit there. But yeah, if you're doing manual back testing, that's quite exhausting, I would say. The good news is saying, D, I got 2 of my accounts funded, one up 1K, the second minus 24. That's excellent. I mean, you basically break even on one and up 1,000 on the other one. I'm guessing you're not copy trading. I like that, because I think if you have multiple accounts rather than going in full port on all of them, just copy trading all of them, especially if you haven't gotten multiple payouts or at least one payout a month for a minimum of 3 months. I don't think you have any business copy trading, because it's just spending extra money before proving your competence via payouts, right? So yeah. Ab says actually identified a great setup for the Sunday Open and capitalized on that NQ push. Was nice. Yeah, brilliant. That's very well done. See, I'm okay with that. So not like looking at the Globex Open and just plowing in for no reason. You had a playbook and you're like, this was my setup. I've seen this happen many times before. I'm going in. And what happened? You ended up nicely up, right? Joe says, took the weekend off screen time, but did some reread of some of the old trading books. Mainly enjoyed the summer. Yeah, we've had a lovely summer in England. You're in England, aren't you, Joe? And actually, Joe and I are going to be together on TopstepTV later on today. So that's going to be lunchbox trading. So if you want to meet Joe, who's a pilot and a trader, yeah, please tune in. It's going to be very, very cool. It's always exciting meeting people face to face, rather than just names on the screen. You talk to someone so much in chat, and then Topstep has given us the opportunity to meet everyone. And then through my own personal coaching, I like to talk to my prospective gold members before we do anything together. It's always nice to meet the people behind the name, right? Chris said, I wish I could do it after hours, but managing 3 kids and a job. Oh, yeah. Okay, so life. Yeah, fair enough. Just, just make sure you somehow be kind to your brain and your mental capital, because it's very important. When we're not rested, when we're completely knackered, we tend to make bad trading decisions, so... Joe says it's important for me to try and make meaningful personal connections. Yeah, I think it's important for everybody. Nobody's a hermit, really. I mean, I'm probably as close to a hermit as you get, but I still get a little bit, it's like, okay, I should probably go see other people apart from just my dogs and my husband. Yeah, I agree. All right, whilst we wait for the next 8 minutes for this price action to figure things out, why don't we have a look at copper? Copper has been a weird one, very quiet, never really recovered from that massive smash that we see on the daily chart. And yeah, so, I mean, at some point they're going to have to unglue themselves from this little area here, but let's have a look just quickly on my other main charting platform to see what is happening. Kind of range bound on a 4-hour chart. Let's drop down. So yeah, pretty quiet open for Globex. Didn't really do that much on Friday either. Suppose 7th of August was the last time we had some action. So yeah, copper, I think they're waiting until like after Labor Day to really start moving it. Currently it is failing the auction, rotating through the initial balance and reaching VWAP for a neutral day type. However, we've opened inside value, which means immediately probabilistically that's not great. If they were going to go into a proper trend, this should have happened earlier. So they should have opened inside value and then pushed all the way outside the value area. Now the value for London is sitting at 448.55, and they're just doing this responsive activity inside value. And now we have a neutral day type, which again, probabilistically, whenever you have an inside value open, so the open sentiment is balanced. It's inside the same area that it was on Friday. But then on the other side, they created a neutral day type. So they expanded the initial balance to both ends. And that's kind of, on most days, that will be the stopping point. So maybe they might drift outside of the value for responsive fade. Again, that will be that Tokyo high takeout, stop, run, and reverse. So kind of a similar picture that I see in gold, except gold has a lot more juice in it, like the way it's moving. It actually had a dedicated trend in Tokyo, which means the interest there and the volumes are bigger. Whereas if you compare what Globex did on copper, it was just like pulling teeth, right? They went absolutely nowhere. Absolutely nowhere. So we're going to avoid copper, I think. Maybe until COMEX, so don't want to be involved in that. Okay, we have 4 minutes until gold's 30-minute time frame finishes, so let's see what they want to do with that. Right now, they're climbing over that 16 EMA, the moving average that I have plotted as a ribbon. The volume, not really doing all that much, so let's move it here so I can show you that. So yeah, not the best volume. If we are to see the full rotation, the volumes really need to increase. I'm going to go down to a lower time frame just to see whether we can get a bit more out of it. And same thing, volumes are kind of falling off, but sometimes you can get a zombie rally into the entire failed auction because gold does have this long-term uptrend, so there could be some bottom pickers here. But for now, they're not exactly plowing in to the long side either. The delta is shaving off a little bit. So when I was looking at setting things up for the stream, the delta was actually over minus 600. That has shaved off to minus 458. So if that can continue to go back into neutral, then this trade is still very much valid. Cheryl is asking me about NQ. I'm not really an NQ trader. I mean, on my live, I don't even have it. I don't pay for it, so I don't even have it. I can have a little look. I do look at it because the VIP session, because again, we have people who are absolutely obsessed with NQ. I mean, on the weekly time frame, it's still heading higher, right? So it's not. And I know you guys hate my white colors, my white charts. So let's have a look. Let's change the colors, because some people are like, Dee, you're a psychopath. What are you doing? So here we go. That should be a bit more palatable for you. So yeah, weekly charts, you know, we're still, you know, even last week we pushed into a new all-time high. And on the, even on the daily time frame, there's a little bit of a pullback. Do we have NVIDIA earnings? I think we have NVIDIA earnings. And that could bring a little bit of a volatility contraction before they react to the earnings, which is usually up. So since NVIDIA is one of the major components of NQ, I would keep an eye out on that, because they usually do earnings in August, if I'm not mistaken. But chat, please, if you have any more dedicated dates and stuff. And yeah. So yeah, where are the value areas for New York Stock Exchange? Because obviously, if you're going to trade it, I mean, right now they're inside value. So here's the Friday value area. They're kind of hanging about the bottom, hanging around the bottom of it. Settlement from Friday is around 23,800, let's say, just ballpark. So really, whenever I'm looking at prices, I want them to be either away from value, away from settlement, away from VWAP, or bouncing from VWAP. That's like the very basics. And then if you start to move away from it, I look at quantitative extremes like average session and average daily ranges for my trade locations instead, if we're anywhere near those. Right now, this is looking a little bit quiet. Obviously, the Tokyo session went into a nice downtrend. They are taking out sort of a late spike. This was a late spike for Friday, so they're messing around in that. Usually for equities, like for example, if I trade DAX, I want to see either a high or a low of the previous session taken out. And then we have that stop run and reverse, or liquidity grab, as the cool kids like to say these days. But I'm not seeing it turning around yet, so I'm guessing maybe they want to hunt the previous Friday lows, because this is not a well-defined low. This is just like a late spike for power hour, and then it also went nowhere. So it's like, meh. Is it still an uptrend? Probably, but to me, it's looking like it's losing a bit of steam, probably ahead of the earnings. All right, let's watch this gold, because it's still not doing anything really. If this is a true failed auction, they need to make a dedicated move higher, dedicated move through this GEX5. Otherwise, this is going to turn into one of those days where we have the range that carries on until the London Metal Exchange opens at 11:40 my time. For reference, it's 10 a.m. at the moment, so that won't happen for another hour and 40 minutes. Can you take a look at DAX? Yeah, sure. Let's have a look at DAX. I don't trade this early on Mondays. I have this rule of like bell curve of trading activity. So whenever it's Monday, the worst thing that you want to do is sit down, have one trade that doesn't work out, and then you just go on an absolute rampage to get it back. And then all you end up doing is digging a hole. Okay, let's have a look at DAX. So I'm just going to like call out the levels and stuff. So we have The open below value. The London value is sitting at 24,471. Again, similar situation as Nasdaq. It went into a short. However, at the moment, we're still sitting inside the initial balance range, so there's nothing to speak of there. The initial balance is pretty sizable for DAX. Usually it's sitting between like 50 and 70 ticks. Right now it's sitting at 126 ticks. One setup that we might want to consider is a failed auction from the value low. So 24,470. And that is incidentally also where the gamma wall is located from some conversion of the options chain. So yeah, the area from 450 to about 500, I would try to see whether they want to short that. By the time we get there, it will also be a pretty extended move to the upside. There's also an average session high exhaustion in a quantitative extreme just above the 500 at 514. So mark off that whole area of like 30 to 50 ticks just to see whether you can get some price action shorts. And for longs, I don't know, man. Like longs, they are not really looking that great to me. You know, if I'm gonna long something, I would like them to have a proper shakeout to one side for the equity index and then to fish for the longs. But right now, this all seems to be it more kind of smells of because whenever you get a bigger initial balance range, that's not a good sign. You don't want an initial balance. You want a bigger extension of the initial balance. So initial balance is when a lot of the market makers are very active, right? So they get up and they try to generate liquidity usually in that first hour. So this is why you typically see the failed auctions happen a lot right after the initial balance is done. And if we had extended the initial balance lower, then went into a failed auction, I would be more inclined to take a long. Right now I see nothing here that I would like to get involved with on DAX, and then DAX on larger time frames. We're also, hold on, let me drag out the other chart here. So DAX here on the daily chart, really quite bunched up, a lot of inside bars. I don't like to see that because it's either a distribution or reaccumulation before they keep going higher. Obviously, I have some options levels here, so let's have a look at the 30-minute chart. And again, sorry about the white charts. I'm an old woman. I cannot be doing black charts. I hate not having the contrast. So yeah, this is that initial balance range. So smash down, and then they never really extend it, turn it around. Some stronger GEX levels in and around the initial balance. I don't like seeing that either. All of these levels are converted from ES because ES tends to be the one to pull the strings, not so much during the London session, but these levels are equally reactive. They represent a very similar open interest that you see for DAX. But DAX, when it comes to options, yes, people have options on DAX, but not necessarily on DAX futures. So it doesn't have a lot of volume that we can use. So what I do, I convert them from ES, and then I will use that as a orientation. But whenever you see all these levels close together, to me that's always like horrible. You want to see distances between the options levels. That almost kind of gives you a profit margin on whatever you're seeing. Finally, a little bit of a push in gold here. So yeah, DAX to me, bit slow, summery, right? Summer doldrums with we just periods of increased volatility. That's how I would put it. But yeah, right now I'm not really itching to trade DAX, at least until we get some sort of an extension of the initial balance. And if that doesn't happen until the New York Stock Exchange opens, then we're going to have a few levels to fall back on, because it's a different session with different players, different goals, and usually a little bit slower price action than the London price action, because at that point, New York Stock Exchange, especially after the Euro close, becomes the out of hours, even though DAX still moves, and I actually quite like doing the post-Euro close reversals, but maybe not in August. I would do that when we have a little bit more liquidity in the markets. How am I setting my TP on gold, my take profit on gold? So you have a couple of options. The first sort of loose take profit is at the top of the initial balance, but the way they've just started moving it, there's a little bit of life here now in the volume on the 5-minute chart. I would still like it to go above this moving average for the volume. So until we get there, I'm just watching it. However, my final sort of target on this would be close to this gamma wall. It is the next important level. Right now we are battling X5, which is not the biggest level, but it can act either as a stopping point or an accelerator. So right now I would like to see it act as an accelerator for this failed auction, because we have some more important levels higher up. So if that works out, that's going to be it. So I'm just going to grab my whatever that's going to be, like peanuts here. It's probably going to be like $100 if we do get there. But again, a London session, time of day, summer, August, I'm not too keen to just kind of let it run for hours in order to reach like 34.05. But yeah, so 2 loose take profits, 1 as a rotation through the initial balance, let's say ballpark 3400 to 3401. And then if it goes into a neutral day type, then there's a really, really good chance and high probability that they're going to smash into that gamma wall before they do anything else. And if I manage to stay in on it, great, but I'm for sure not going to be waiting here for 3 hours. If they slow down, the volume is not there. So yeah, we'll see. I'm not really in the mood to sit for 5 hours in a trade today. But yeah, right now I'm going to move back to the 30-minute chart because I already have the entry and everything. And now I'm just going to wait until the 30-minute close, because there is nothing really for me to glean at this particular moment on a very low time frame. I don't want to mess around with stops because it is a lower liquidity it is a lower liquidity environment. It's a lower liquidity environment in general in August, and that tends to sometimes bring these moves where they just wick it by like 50, 70 ticks, and then you're like, oh, I shouldn't have moved my stop to be 35 ticks. So I'm doing very small size, pretty sizable stop loss so that I'm not wicked out of my perfectly good trade. It still has a positive risk reward. It still looks valid at this particular point. So there is nothing for me to overmanage here. This is how people start landing the trade. They get like 20 ticks into profit, which is not even like, it's not even 0.5 R yet, right? In profit. And then people are like, oh, I'm going to move it. And it's like 20 ticks on gold. If they just wag it a little bit, you're not going to survive that. And then you have nothing for all of that effort. So I'm somebody who preaches accepting risk. So we are supposed to be risk takers. We are traders, right? And yet, by people overmanaging things, moving stops to break even too quickly, what are you doing? You're avoiding the pain of risk. So you're trying to avoid risk at all costs, which ultimately ends up not working out because you get nothing and eventually the price goes straight to your target. So if that's something that's happening to you, just leave your stops alone, right? Commit to the trade. And if you're not in with like 5, 10, or 15 lots, you should be able to absorb the loss. And then you're going to get data from it, right? But, doing too much over management until you Lenny and kill the trade, that's not how to grow as a trader. So you need to relax in a trade, and you need to not worry about the losses as much. And you need to just look at all of this as data collection, especially until you get to a certain point of profitability. And, the amount of times that people just get a tiniest move in their direction, they're like, oh, I'm moving it to break even. It's like, what are you afraid of? Why? It's like, what do you think is going to happen if you just leave it alone to do its thing? What's the worst that can happen? Oh, you lose a trade. Oh, boo-hoo. So, yeah, I think we have some, like, toddlery behaviors whenever you first get involved in trading. And some people carry over that behavior for years and years into their systems and strategies. But, and then they have no traction for like 4 or 5, 6, 7 years. And that's why. Just leave it alone, man. Like, sometimes managing a trade is not managing it at all. Just, just let it breathe. Let it breathe. Don't choke it to death. Bruno says Aaron managed his MGC trade around 40 ticks this morning. Yeah, that's a great profit. Yeah, 40 ticks is awesome. Again, if I get 40 ticks out of this and it starts to mess around, I'll take that. I didn't get a chance to watch Aaron this morning. We had a bit of a busy weekend, so on Saturday we had some relatives from my husband's side of the family. They came to visit. So for me, it was a very, very long Saturday, and you know that I'm not great with energy levels. I have this stupid vaccine injury that for 3.5 years now. And it was a very busy day, so I'm still a little bit tired from that. Spent most of Sunday just not doing anything. I just did one dog walk. That was like for an hour, and then I was just in bed. So I didn't recover just yet. So I'm probably gonna need another half day at some point. So I might go to bed right after lunchbox trading with Joe today. And yes, I sometimes go to bed at 7 p.m. Yes. Granny D in full force. Dadet says, I'm new to trading. I keep doing exactly that. Moving to break even far too early. Okay, so let's talk about the newbies, right? The novice traders. It's awesome that you are getting involved in this trading business, but please, before you do anything, you need to collect data without over-optimizing and messing around with your playbooks. As a new trader, you still don't have your tried and tested setups. So messing around with them, all that you're doing is not allowing yourself to collect quality data. Because as much as you think that this is fun and we're clicking buttons, this is data science. It's nothing more, nothing less. It's data science and a study of probabilities using orientation points that may change throughout the course of your career, because sometimes you will notice that one level works better, the other one only works every so often, and then you slowly start to get rid of the things that are not really working often enough, or they don't appear often enough, and you start keeping the stuff that you can take advantage of nearly every single day, maybe even multiple times per day. But whilst you're starting out, so this is for all the newbies out there, do not mess around. Have volatility adjusted stops. Lower your size. You have no business trading with any sort of size in the beginning of trading, okay? All you're doing is collecting and aggregating data. Profit will come sooner when you're focusing on process. But chasing profits before you have a tried and tested strategy that you have full confidence in and full experience in for at least like 6 months to a year, where you've done the same thing over and over, you've gathered some probabilities about those playbooks, and now you can just keep testing them over time. But what you're doing there is it moves a few ticks in your profit, you move it to break even, you're knocked out, and then you're not able to live through the trade setup as you intended it to. And please use positive risk reward. Use, at the very least, 1.5, maybe 2R. I like to teach with 2R multiples because it's a very achievable target intraday. It can happen multiple times a day as well. But again, if you're a novice, try to locate 3 good setups up and down, okay? That can come later when you realize how the market moves from these bigger orientation points. And to be honest, I'm not a scalper because I can't be bothered to do like smaller trades. I want to do less work for more money. I don't want to do more work for peanuts, okay? So you need to change that in your head. This is not a normal job, a 9 to 5, where more hours worked means more money. It doesn't, okay? It is a very odd industry, okay? All right, so we're struggling around this 33.95, and now it's going to go into a range. Just you wait. Now we're going to just sit here for the next hour and a half, and then they're going to move it when we get to closer to the overlap in pre-market and COMEX. So yeah, would love it if we had DAX here, because gold does this. Like, if you notice, the gold always does this around this time. I put huge emphasis on the time of day as well. And the amount of times that I see it go into a 2-hour consolidation just in and around this time, I know why it does that, because we are in a dead zone between the Tokyo close, and then Frankfurt and London don't really do that much gold trading. The real metals trading for these hours really starts with the LME. Even though they then trade something like copper and aluminium, like a whole bunch of weird metals. And then towards closer to COMEX open, they have this like curb trading session where everything is traded. But you will notice an increase in volume once LME starts trading. So yeah. This is why I said if I manage to get 40 ticks out of this, I will be happy, because we do have that time of day component. If I'm going to trade, if I was going to trade gold throughout the year, which I don't do, I like to trade copper, I trade RBOB, I trade natural gas, but that I trade like late in the day. So I don't even look at natural gas before 3 p.m. my time. That's 9 a.m. Central. And then I see whether there's anything. So for gold for me is not really a London product, but, right now it's the only thing that's moving. So to me, London-specific products are DAX, Bund, German Bund, which I'm not a Bund trader, but I've seen so many people who loved trading Bund for London hours. And my weapon of choice for London is DAX. So I have been pushing in the background to see if we can get DAX to the top of the queue. Even if I only get it for my live, if they can just allow me to get the data fees on my live. And then, people can kind of follow that, but I will be trading DAX on the Topstep account. But yeah, every time I kind of get involved in summertime trading London for gold, it moves, but it's always like, it's like pulling teeth. It annoys the hell out of me. And then on a 30-minute time frame, we still don't really have much volume pushing. Let's drop down to a lower time frame. So we really need to crack the 33.95 for any serious move higher. And if that doesn't happen, I'll just be closing this and waiting for it to have a little bit more commitment to either side, because this is starting to get a bit annoying. We have a 4-week point of control lining up with the 3400. So, maybe if I just breathe and be a little bit more patient, maybe we can get up to that level. But yeah, I am very aware that my energy levels are not fully there. So maybe I'm not being as patient, just kind of running you through my thought process. Maybe I'm not being as patient as I should be, Because normally you see me, you know, I'm happy to stay in a trade for hours on end. But today I kind of came into the market with like, oh, I can't be bothered with 3-hour trades. So that's something I need to figure out by myself. But yeah, let's give it some time, because I am positioned below this 33.95 orientation area. And my current orientation really for this trade is the initial balance, right? So if we exit the initial balance, I will close it. And I'm talking either 15 or 30-minute time frames. I'm not talking like, oh, it closes 2 minutes and then I need to grasshopper out, because they can wick it down, then bring it back up again. So we need to focus on 15 and 30 minutes. But yeah, volumes are just meh. They are not really increasing. They're not decreasing either. So they're just staying pretty constant. Pretty constant. So yeah, let's go back up to 30-minute time frame and wait for the next 6 minutes to see whether they penetrate into this supply here and whether they finish above 33.95 or below it, because I am aiming for 105 tick target, so I can't be grasshoppering out like that. Otherwise, I'm going to have to wear a grasshopper hat. Right, and this dome so thin, like on the book map, they are showing these orders as like, oh, these are bigger orders. It's like, really? 18, 16, 21. It's a bigger order for this current situation, which is absolutely pathetic for gold. It should be really, if you're looking for an order block that will put a stop to any kind of further price movement, you really want to see like 30, 42, maybe a 50, somewhere in there. But yeah, very, very thin August markets. Paul H says, just arrived, grabbing coffee and hitting the like. Thank you. Oh yeah, so let's remind everyone, if you're finding any value in what I'm talking about, whether it's psychology, whether it's novice trader advice, whether it's just analyzing the markets through market mechanics levels, options chain, market profile, quantitative extremes, please hit the like. Hit the like. It doesn't cost anything, and it really helps me to know whether I'm doing any kind of service to the community or not. It's like, yeah, you talk too much, Dee. Yeah, but talking is a part of it, right? If we don't talk, if you don't have design distractions, you're going to do a whole bunch of stupid trades. So talking actually is an underrated thing in trading streams. Joseph said, that is a good habit. I'm trying to shift my bedtime to earlier, to like before 10 p.m. UK time. Yeah, so I made that shift because I had to, because my energy was just like nowhere to be seen. And now it's so much better, because sometimes when I need a lot of sleep, I don't, like remember that I was a session musician, so I was a night owl, like ultra night owl. I used to go to bed at like 5, 6, 7 a.m. Sometimes I had gigs where we wouldn't even finish at the club until 5 a.m. So I would get home by 6 or 7, or to the hotel or wherever we were staying. And then, you would sleep through most of the day. But when I got into prop trading, obviously I had to go into the office, and that was a huge struggle for me. I was so useless, and arguably I'm still not at my like full sort of thinking space. I think my brain still kicks in after 1 p.m. Doesn't matter if I'm awake or not, but I do love my sleep. Like, I do love going to bed early and just sleeping away. Oh, someone's saying, you're a pleasant talker though. Well, there is possibly a reason why Topstep invited me to run my own show. Presumably it's because I have some kind of gift of gab, right? One can hope. If I was somebody who's completely uninteresting, because you have some streamers that are on their own streams, and you log in and they're like, You're like, is this on? Like, are you going to say something? And then they say like 2 words and you know nothing about them. How important is it to you guys? Let me ask the chat. When you're watching the trading stream, because I was actually watching something with Tom Sosnoff, and I love the guy. He's an absolute genius. I adore him, and especially for the options side of things. And he was saying that the way they built their content educational side of things is by getting to know people and by talking about their lives whilst also bringing value. So how important is it for you to actually know things about your presenter? Do you like it when we talk about some of our more personal lives? Obviously not going into too much detail, but do you enjoy that? Do you find value in that? Do you trust people more over just logging into somebody who's constantly pushing Lambos in your face and you know nothing about them? Because I know which side I'm leaning on. If I find somebody likable, and if they're willing to open up about, how they run maybe some of their other businesses or what they did over the weekend with their family, as long as they're willing to share, I would much rather watch a streamer like that than somebody who's just like charts, levels, Joe says it adds the human touch. Yeah. I love hearing about your life. Yeah. Tendra is asking, as a former musician myself, are there any certain traits from your music era that can help you be a better? Absolutely. Oh my God. To me, music and trading are so similar. Like as a highly skilled musician, you have to do what? Repetition, practice, methodical approach. Correct? Trading is the same. If you're a highly skilled musician, use all of those in your trading journey. How did you get to your skill level as a musician? So presumably you had lessons, or you were taking a piece and then you were breaking it down by sections and finding the phrases that were bothering you. In trading, that would directly translate to having execution mistakes that are not perfect. And you won't find perfection completely in trading, but you can find commonalities between certain playbooks and how they look when they appear. So have an orientation level. Don't just trade through, not knowing. At least have some sort of support resistances in there, and time of day. If you're going to take anything from my streams, take the time of day as a component. Because, for example, for London, you have the Frankfurt fakeout. And that has to happen, ideally, the takeout of Tokyo session lows or highs for the highest probability setup. It has to happen from London 7 a.m. all the way up to 10 a.m. After that, it's anyone's game what's going to happen, So really, if you're looking to enter trades at the time, you can still use those levels as targets, like I'm trying to here. But just know that setups need to occur at a particular time of day. I don't know why that's not talked about enough. Time is a huge component. Markets are not unstructured environments. They are, they're not like a casino where it's like, oh yeah, it can happen at any time, whatever. They are chaotic, but they're also very structured. And that comes with attaching a time of day when your setups have the highest probability. But just like the musicians, you need to identify at the very least like 3 playbooks that you're going to practice on. I mean, if you're very new, 1 playbook that you're going to wait for it to appear. You're going to hone your patience on that one setup and not get your brain used to this dopamine fix that we just clickety click, clickety click, clickety click, and then kind of somehow you will make money. Anybody who's a scalper, the best scalpers, I always say this, they do 3 to 5 trades per day. They don't sit there smashing 100 trades a day. Watch the stream scalpers, watch Rips, watch Nick for a tick. He used to be with us, right? Now he's gone off to another firm. But he's still an excellent trader. Like, I love Nick as a guy, right? As a personality, as a trader, as somebody who's very good at banter. Does he smash like 50 trades in a session? No, he sits there and he waits and he waits and he waits. And then as musicians, if you, for example, have I don't know what you play, but for me, I was a electric guitarist and a sax player. Now, when you're a sax player, you can't just play your solos across every piece of the music, right? You have to wait your turn. And imagine a musician going, oh, I can't be bothered to wait my turn. I'm just going to play my solo whenever. Like we start a track and the singer is supposed to be doing the verse and you start smashing in your solo. Like what kind of a mess would that be? Who would want it? Like, what are we doing? Dixieland? Really? Yeah, so think of it in terms of structure. Is it the right time for my solo, aka your trade, to happen? Or do I have to wait for a better level? Wait for, the solo part later on in the music, in the song, before I ruin everybody's time and put a wrench in the works in structure and all the stuff that we practice. Why? Because you don't have the patience to wait. Like, to me, whenever I hear somebody saying, I don't have the patience to wait, it's like, well, tough shit, man, because this job comes with a job description, line 1, patience. And you're getting involved in something that, I don't have patience. Well, then you'll have to develop it. You want to make money out of this? Like, there's no excuses. No excuses. I'm a very straightforward coach. I never pat people on the back for doing the wrong thing. I don't bash people, but I will not pat you on the back if you've done a whole bunch of stupid muppety moments and then go, oh, it's okay, it'll be all right. It won't be all right because you have issues. You need to tackle them one by one. Deeyana with a lovely, lovely show, a lovely chat message. I am from Ukraine, and watching your streams, I start to believe that there is life after the war. This would be impossible without you talking about your personal things. Thank you so much. Deeyana, I'm very, very sad that you are going through a thing that I went through when, unfortunately, NATO bombed Belgrade. Now, for us, yes, we had a decade of civil wars, but they kept happening in different parts. So I was from Belgrade. So for me, I only went through the war for 78 days. Now, we had difficult times because obviously my dad went to fight at one point, and it was a very challenging time. I think I was only like 13 years old. Luckily, he came back, but it was a very, very challenging time for 10 years of my life. Now, you guys are going through an extensive assault, like day after day, month after month. I am obviously reflecting on how it was for me. Yes, there is life after war. Yes, you can absolutely build on your experiences once it's all over. You will probably have to deal with some post-traumatic stress, but be aware that you get stronger after it, and you actually get more emotionally resilient after all of the stuff. Because you know what happened to me? Before then, I was a little bit emotional, and I was a big gung-ho, like spoiled brat. I came from a very nice, affluent family background, mom and dad together and in love and all of that. And after that, after the war, I realized where my priorities were. But it also had the effect that now I had the experience of such an intense environment that was purely life and death, day in, day out. There was no respite from it, right? You know how it is. You are sleeping, you hear the planes, you're immediately in fight or flight mode, right? You get to differentiate between the sonic booms and the actual detonations. And you learn how to manage yourself in like the highest stress environment that you will that anyone can ever experience, because you also don't know whether you're going to live or not. Like it's anyone's guess. It's a horrible thing to think about, but that's what the war does to people. But once it's all over and done with, you find that some stupid life events that people get so worked up over, like, oh, we're a little bit tight on the budget this month. Like, who cares? We're alive. And your emotional resilience that you will gain out of that horrific experience is that it will make you stronger. And that's a good thing for trading, right? You can build your life on that and you become braver because you suddenly go, what am I afraid of? Moving to another country? Damn, I mean, we were under bombs just not too long ago. That's actually how I moved to London, because before then I was a little bit afraid to leave my family. I was very young. I was like 19 years old, and I was like, well, I kind of have a good thing going on here. But the war forced me to find ways to leave that place, first and foremost, and to not be afraid to be alone with no family. So there are positives. Stay strong. I'm praying that this whole thing will be over for you guys. So let's hope, we can find some sort of a solution, right? Wars are horrendous. Wars are absolutely horrendous. So Sandy, my sister, she's in chat. We went through the NATO bombing together, and she said, I'm still highly emotional, but since 1999, I have learned to protect it. In many cases, hide it. I don't know whether you're emotional, Sandy. You don't exactly cry at every, what is your idea of emotions? Because I know you get angry a lot, but you're not you don't cry. When you're somebody tells you something, Sandy, your response is not to cry. Your response is like, you're wrong. I'm still gonna do it. And I reckon that's the emotional resilience from all the crap that we've been through. So yeah. Bowser says ICT talks about it. What, the emotional resilience or wars? Has he been through a war? I'm not familiar with that. Okay, so we're getting 32 ticks out of this trade. We'll see what's happening. Can they push it? I mean, one thing that I've just noticed is that there's a delta divergence. So the delta keeps going negative and now they're pushing higher. So that could mean that we have a short squeeze of some sort happening. Bruno is asking, so Sandy is the Batman who gives slaps. Yeah, pretty much. Especially she doesn't slap them, but verbally, absolutely. So yeah, she reckons she's emotional. I don't really see that, but yeah. Oh, come on, reach this initial balance high already. Let me have a good stretch. What's up, Seven? You're a bit bored. One of my dogs. Well, I actually have 5 dogs in here. They've been very, very good puppies. Not a peep out of them, but Seven just woke up and she was like, ow! And I did a yawn. Short squeeze, minus 700 delta into minus 872 after a nice little shake out. So we had the sweep. Now, the sweeps can be scary, but if you know that they're sweeps, you can kind of manage them a little bit better. And the delta was, before that sweep, it was 720. So here's a couple of things that are happening. So sweep happens. Delta stops, delta drops even more. And then if this is a short squeeze, they should now come back up to this previous high where the sweep started, if it's a short squeeze. If it isn't, then this is another reversal. But again, I'm using the 33.95 as my orientation point, and I'm not using anything lower than the 30-minute time frame for my signals. So I'm not dropping down to a 100 tick chart. I'm not dropping down to a 5-minute chart. I don't care what happens on the little squiggly, tiny time frames. I want to see how we're going to finish this stream in 18 minutes time and how the 30-minute time frame is going to look, because we're still inside the initial balance. It's not much for me to do, We don't really have any notable releases that could put a wrench in the works. Obviously, we can still have headline risk. The last thing that we had was Eurozone trade balance, which was 40 minutes ago. And then, let me just check. Do we have today? Yeah, we've got nothing today, nothing of note. So yeah, there's nothing to push this terribly against the current developments. And oil prices have reversed a little bit. Any speeches? No. Trump did a remark on Truth Social overnight, but again, if that had an effect, that's probably out of focus right now. Yeah, so I'm not really seeing anything that can suddenly make gold completely turn around. Look, stranger things have happened, but I'm in this trade off the back of value high, rejection. VWAP didn't even get touched on this chart. Then we went into a failed auction, wasn't the strongest, and then we keep knocking into this 33.95 with higher highs. So again, I need to be focusing just on a 30-minute time frame here. So it is August after all, so it's everything takes so much longer. Or you get tiny little moves when you're like, oh, okay, I've got 30 ticks, brilliant. But I'm not one to fish for 30 ticks unless we have a pretty established range day that's in balance. Or, you know, we're in a hangover day after a big release where we had 1 million ticks the previous day. MS says, which war are you talking about? The Yugoslavian wars. I lived through that. Those were my teenage years. And then the NATO bombing in 1999. That's what I lived through. I mean, Sandy, crying is good. It activates the parasympathetic system. So it's not... A lot of people are like men, you know, I know a lot of men who like to hold things in. They're like, I'm not going to cry. I think the newer generation is not like that. They're very much carrying their heart on their sleeve, I think. But those of us who are like Gen X and baby boomers and stuff, we don't like to show emotion. It's not a good thing, you know, it's not very healthy. Because crying is a mechanism that re-engages your parasympathetic system. I don't cry either, you know, that's not very good either. But I have other ways of engaging my parasympathetic nervous system. Like, for example, if you are digesting something, that's also rest and digest, aka parasympathetic system. That's why when you're eating, usually everybody calms down, the talking stops. A lot of people are, you know, not really aiming to argue with their mouth full and stuff, you know, think about it. And that's because when you eat, there's a process that's called rest and digest, and that is all a part of the parasympathetic nervous system. Shay says, I've been working on that. I get a bit quick to grab profits sometimes. Yeah, so patience. Ab says, I just got done. My wife and I never thought I'd be crying so much in my late 30s. I've never been a crier. Yeah, exactly. But it helps, guys. This is a very, like, trading is a very difficult thing. And if you find that at the end of the day you did, you know, some muppety things and you're feeling bad about it, go and have a little cry. Like, I remember when we first started TopstepTV, Dakota said something really funny. He said, "Are you really a trader if you haven't cried in the corner hugging yourself?" It's so true. It's like you mess things up and you lose a ton of cash that you've been working for like 2 years or something, and you mess it up like royally. What are you going to do? Are you going to be strong about it? No, you're going to go and cry like a baby and go, "Why did I do that?" And then it becomes easier. And then you kind of wake up the next day. It's like, okay, let's dust ourselves off and see if we can somehow pull it back together. It's definitely a coping mechanism, but it's a good one. So you feel like crying, go and ugly cry for an hour. You'll feel a lot more better. A lot more better. That's not English. A lot better. Oh God, no, dude. Coho Salmon says at the end of the trading day, it's 4:20 time. Don't think that by smoking some herbs, as you like to say, is going to do anything for your brain development. In fact, there are studies showing that weed prevents the new neurons getting created. If you're somebody who is especially young and your brain is still not fully mature and developed, smoking weed is quite possibly the way to freeze yourself in time, keep making the same mistakes. And notice the big stoners, most of them are just who have been doing it since they were young. What have they achieved in life? F all, as we like to say over here. Why? Because their brains get stuck at the time when they started smoking excessively. And their brains just don't develop the right way. They're literally still children or very young individuals, even though they're like 40, 50, 60 years old. Those who have achieved stuff in life and they decide that they want to smoke a little bit or a lot, knock yourself out, man. I mean, you've already had a life, you've built businesses, you've had a family, you have everything you need in life. Do it. I don't care. But it's the young traders who are just starting in this business, and you need your brain to be at like full capacity. And what do? You go and get stoned and you're like out of it. There's no, like, it lessens the motivation. It actually decimates motivation in people. Why? Because you're messing with the dopamine and serotonin mechanisms in your brain. It's not good. Cavalier, don't touch my camera. And Mateus, are you a young person and are you a new trader? If you say you're a young novice trader and you're in your early 20s, I'm just gonna go and jump off a bridge or something. Yeah, funny, weirdo. Funny. Yeah, look, we're trying to do something that's considered the most difficult skill in the world, right? It's like, imagine if somebody was studying to be a surgeon and practicing to be a surgeon. Would you be happy to find out that they smoke weed and that they're going to be cutting you up and doing your surgery? Think about that. So why do you trust yourself to manage your own money, which is arguably not surgery, but can also derail your life and your lifestyle because you mess up your personal finances by doing stupid things? Would you trust yourself? Something to think about. 2 years profitable, 3 years of pain, 30. Yeah, but so you've already had a life. Like, I'm not talking about people whose brains are completely, formed. I'm talking about young individuals, 20, 21, 23, up to like about 25. That's the point where our brains are fully formed, right? Some people say even 27 for certain people, but generally by the time you're 25, you're a fully formed person. Just don't go destroying your neural networks or seizing them at the current development state. You need that neuroplasticity, and weed is not good for that. And again, I'm not talking about recreational use. I'm not some kind of a, trading nun over here. I used to be a musician, so I'm going to leave it at that. But it's been years, ever since I went into trading. Yes, there were a few, moments, but generally it's been like at least 10 years since I've touched anything. So it's just not good for you. It's not good for you. So Joe Black, I have a question for you, because you say 4 hours. Now 4 hours, depending on the platform that you're using, will look pretty different, because some of them started at Globex, other people started at midnight, some platforms started, at 2 a.m. London time. So when you're referencing a 4-hour chart, can you also reference when your candles are actually starting? Because I see you posting a lot on the main broadcast. Oh, we're finishing a 4-hour. And I'm like, well, not on my chart. On my chart, we actually have another hour before we get to the end of the 4-hour chart. And the 4-hour chart is especially tricky, because you can have different points, starting points. Yeah, so again, back to the whole weed conversation. If you're somebody who smokes weed every so often, you're like, oh, it's a party, have a few tokes. That's fine. But I see people who are smoking daily or every single weekend. What are you doing with your life? Is your life so terrible that you have to either binge drink or smoke yourself stupid to handle it? And if that's the case, then change it. But weed is not going to help there. Like, I'm sorry, I'm just not for that. When you're accomplished, when you're happy, sipping Mai Tais in your mansion, do whatever you like, right? Bowser says, why does my wife always want to talk when she's eating? She talks more when eating. What, while she's actively chewing? So that's just weird. I don't know. Question, do you think it repairs, reverses after not smoking? Yes, it actually even, there are some studies out there that you can look for. I think the full effect of physical and mental reversal is actually achieved after 15 years from not smoking anything. But 5 years is definitely enough to begin repair. It's not going to reverse everything, especially if you've been a heavy user. But it's about 15 years from the moment you stop when it actually completely reverses the damage. So even if you smoked for 20 years, but then you get to your 30s or 40s, let's say you get to 35 and you've been smoking for a long time, since you were a teen. If you stop at 35, you can expect that by the time you're in your 50s and 60s that you're not going to have anything showing up anywhere as lasting damage. Oh, here we go. Sandy has a Sandy has a good suggestion. If the mealtime is the only time you are together, that's why. Yeah, that could be why. Arbab, yes, dude, I am married. I've just celebrated 10 years of marriage and 20 years together with my James. High Life says, what did you study? You know your psychology, neuroplasticity. I'm just a nerd. I studied music. I studied classical flute and music production, so yeah. So yeah, my interest in neuroplasticity and psychology is purely layman, but because I'm a nerd, I kind of go deep into everything. So I don't know. I've always been like that. I don't do anything halfway. So if I want to know how psychology has affected my trading, I want to know the processes behind it. And this is why I started studying it just myself. I don't have a degree or anything. I'm just a layman who likes to read a lot. So I started studying it when I had some issues with not being able to control the fight or flight response. And then in 2009, I started reading a whole bunch of books and studies and techniques and meditative practices that can increase neuroplasticity and like a whole bunch of stuff. So now I sound like I actually maybe have a degree, but no, I do not. And I will never say that I'm an expert. I'm a layman. I'm just somebody who has a huge interest in it. So, yeah. Yeah, Coho is saying Willie Nelson is 92. Yeah, Willie Nelson achieved a lot. So, again, unless you're equivalent to him, I would highly... Like, I just love it when people, like, you know, quote either, like, famous musicians or actors or business people that have achieved so much in life. Like, George Michael smoked weed all of his life. Yeah, but George Michael was an extraordinarily talented singer who made millions by the time he was like 23. So it's like, if you're not in that position, like, you can't be doing the same thing. Like, I'm sorry, I have no sympathy for that whatsoever. Yeah. But hey, you do you, man. Like, well, I'm just a random person on the internet telling you what didn't work for most of my traders who were stoners. But you do you. I'm not here to you know, be like some kind of a trader nun and to tell you don't smoke, don't do drugs, don't drink. Look, I still smoke nicotine, still do, right? But nicotine is actually a nootropic. It is not a nervous system depressant, right? Different. Anyways, I'm going to sit in this trade because why not? As Joe Black said, they will either push ES down or ES up or gold down. If that happens, that's fine. I will close it. If not, I'm willing to sit this through this annoying period where we are getting a little bit of extra volume. But yeah, let's finish up the Monday stream. I will see you a little bit later on the main broadcast when Joseph Anthony from the chat, he will be with me because he's one of my VIPs. He has a very interesting way of looking at things. He is a pilot. He's very quick to make decisions. He can. He already has a formed way of looking at things, so it's going to be a good stream. And I'm really looking forward to it. That's it for now. This was the Eurotrade on TopstepTV. Thank you for being with me. Hit the like on the way out. I really, really appreciate it. And, you know, thank you for spending time with me. It's always good to see everybody in chat and always good to hear different opinions and talk about life, do a couple of trades, do a bit of analysis or a lot of analysis, and then see how we can take advantage of what this quiet August week has to bring. I will see you later. Take care.